Well, Nintendo's not going to be happy about this one. News went out this morning, and wouldn't you know it, not too long after, all of a sudden images of what we believe to be the Nintendo Switch 2 just started to appear online. And the story seems to be that this is from, I guess, a factory worker or somebody who is working on accessories, and they did some work in CAD. But on top of that, we have images of what looks like the system disassembled a bit and the board starting to be manufactured and worked on. So I mean, we have quite a bit of stuff that happened today. We even have some of the specifications seemingly confirmed for this thing, and it tells me that Nintendo has to be preparing some kind of announcement or presentation, because this could be the situation where they waited just a little too long, and now it seems like the internet itself made the announcement for them. But we're going to take a quick look at some of this stuff here today as things are continuing to break, and people even looking for Nintendo to have some kind of response. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. This is over on VGC, which I will leave linked down below, as they did a pretty good job of getting some of the info together, as well as even working to confirm some of the design here with one of their sources saying that this is what Nintendo has told partners to expect from its design. Now, down here, we can see Andy Robinson just started to basically mass tweet all the different images that were appearing over on Reddit. And these apparently are from a Chinese social media site or like a forum. And as these were getting posted up, they then started, of course, to circulate online, because that's typically what happens. But along with this, we had some fairly detailed specifications that were put out there. And these actually are things we've already talked about, because people were able to, specifically on like fan boards, were able to cross-reference shipping logs and figure out what was being moved around to create these systems. So it's not like anything brand new crazy or anything like that, but it is more confirmation as to this system from Nintendo being a substantial leap actually over what we have for the current Switch. And I think that that's just awesome to see. So it looks like we have 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5X at 7,500 mega transfers, which that is, I believe that's the same speed as the ROG Ally X, if I'm not mistaken. So again, this should be a system that is fairly capable. 256 gigabytes of onboard storage, and it looks like the transfer speed is a little below what we have with the Xbox Series S and X, this one at 2100 megabytes per second. So what that means is Nintendo should be on the eliminate loading screens bandwagon here pretty soon with this system. So that, to me, is the most exciting part, because it's something I notice consistently when I go back to the Switch is, oh yeah, that's right, it takes a while for things to load on this system. Now, on top of that, they even have detailed measurements and stuff for it, so this seems pretty straightforward, that I guess somebody decided to just start throwing this information out there as they were working on the system, because we have some of those CAD renderings I was mentioning, and this to me is, I guess, a person who had the measurements, had the design in front of them, and they decided to put together this, which could be for things like accessories. For example, people who want to design their accessories in CAD and stuff, they have the files in order to match things up with the correct measurements. This looks to be comparing it to the previous model Switch, the current one we have now with the singular kickstand here. And you'll notice that it is, it's quite a bit bigger. And I think that's the part that might surprise some people, is we could be dealing with something closer to the Steam Deck size. Now, the Joy-Cons on the side of this newer, the Switch 2, they look a little more elegant or sleek compared to I guess the sides of the Steam Deck, so it won't necessarily be as, I assume, as difficult to manage, considering you can remove them, and then you have something that might be a bit more, it's not really pocket size, more bag sized, I guess. It's hard enough to put the current Switch in a pocket. You're definitely not putting this thing in there, but this would be to accommodate the 8-inch screen that was already told to us. Nate actually mentioned this along with VGC not too long ago. So this, again, is expected. If you have a larger screen, you're going to have a larger system. Now, then we start getting into some interesting parts here with, as you can see, the system, the board, the Joy-Cons. Here are the Joy-Cons here, and I actually threw them into, here we go, some image editing so we can look at it a bit better. I originally thought that these two right here, I looked at them, I said, whoa, were they putting headphone jacks on the Joy-Cons when I first looked at the image? I don't believe so. These are pretty small then. I think these would be more or less to help align the Joy-Cons, because it does not look like they will be having a rail system with this. All right, so it's already been mentioned that it's magnetic, and I kind of feel like this is sort of a guide along with, of course, the port here, but this more to help strengthen it, because if you were just relying on the port, you would most likely get to a position where this thing could just kind of break off, and that's something I'm sure Nintendo would have to deal with and make sure is correct. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Is Nintendo has been working with, as we've talked about before, magnets and stuff, and this all working together to basically, I guess, press it onto the side of the system and latch in. It does look like they still have some like minor hooking down here with like a guide on either one. So maybe it just kind of, when you push down, it opens up slightly on the top and bottom and then grabs it when it gets far enough in. And maybe you have a button that helps to unlatch it from there. So interesting design though. And I think that is something that will just be better overall than what we have with the sliding rails. Those can be kind of annoying, and people at times were getting their Joy-Cons just stuck on the system. And if we look at, here we have the back of the system with the back plate off. Here's the board that has nothing on it, clearly. Like, it doesn't have the chipset, we don't have the RAM, nothing. But there is a lot we can take away from this. So one thing is we do have a mystery button on the Joy-Con. I assume this is our home button here. But then we have this square button. And you can say, oh, they moved the share button over there. But we have a share button here where it normally would be on this side. So I don't think that's another share button. I'm not sure what that is, and that has been some speculation, as it's discussed that there is an extra button on the Joy-Con. So we have to go back and look at that rumor that got out there, as that is looking to be more and more legitimate. Otherwise, though, there's no D-pad, so they are sticking with the two Joy-Con approach, where you can hand a Joy-Con off to another person to play. And they even moved around and tried to make what seemed to be the SL, SR buttons a bit more ergonomic. They're just wider, right, as we saw in that previous image here. So I guess just easier to press. This is never going to be a comfortable way to play a game. I think most of us understand that. So I don't know, maybe Nintendo just trying to play around with the design to make it a bit more palatable. But we also have what I think is kind of cool, the LED lights facing us when you remove the Joy-Con. So not facing up at you when you're playing it, right on the sides. We have to really look at it. In this case, though, it's more presented to you. So I think that is a good design choice there. And then looking at the board itself, we do have our cartridge slot here. So yes, physical media, and it looks, I mean, it's a cartridge slot. It's probably going to look very similar to the current Switch, because it should still take those cartridges. Although I am assuming Nintendo is going to have specific cartridge molds for this, so it'll be kind of like the DS to the 3DS situation. DS carts fit in the 3DS, 3DS carts don't fit in the DS, right? That seems pretty straightforward. We do have our processor, our chipset here, RAM, that's, again, very straightforward, nothing too crazy there. Dual channel, so 2 6GB chips, I would assume. And then we have our new Tegra. That's going to be the part that I'm really curious about, how exactly that comes together with NVIDIA and Nintendo, and if NVIDIA decides to use it outside of the Switch like we saw previously, where it went to like their Shield TV and stuff, because there they don't necessarily downclock it like Nintendo will, and you could see all kinds of really cool stuff coming out of that. So when I look around this board, something else I noticed that I thought was kind of interesting, it does have 2 USB-C ports, or at least just 2 ports in general. So if we're looking at this now, this is technically flipped around. All right, and we can tell because the fan is here, and they would exhaust air out of the top like this. So you have to flip this 90 degrees, I guess, and that would be looking correct then. So we have what appears to be a USB-C port here, and I say that because most likely that's how this thing's going to dock, right? You drop it into it, and that's pretty straightforward. But then at the top, we have, again, what I assume to be is a USB-C port that I figure is mostly going to be there for charging and data. I don't think you're going to dock this thing upside down necessarily. So it is interesting that Nintendo goes that route, but I think that does solve an annoyance I have with the current Switch. Is if you use the kickstand, you can't charge the system technically, and that has always been a weird thing to me. You have to get some sort of external stand to pick the system up off of the table so you can plug it in. So in this case, Nintendo may have actually solved that by, yes, just putting another port on there. So that's good. I think like the Steam Deck, for example, only still has 1 port at the top, but it is at the top. So it's a bit, I think, a bit easier to charge that way. Other PC handhelds have multiple ports just in case. So I think good design choice there by Nintendo to go that route. I'm also curious about our battery, which, I mean, it's pretty clear. There's a battery compartment right there. I'm curious what the capacity is for this, because that is still going to be a major question, is what kind of battery life does this thing get, as we are expecting a sizable leap in terms of graphical output here and what it's able to do. You would assume the battery would be able to accommodate that. And what I'm seeing here is one that looks, I mean, it looks like it's kind of shrunken a bit. It's very strange to think that. You can also make a battery like form factor in different ways. You can spread the thing out if you want to flatten it more. You can stack them if you don't mind it being a bit thicker here. And maybe that's the route Nintendo's going, rather than flatten it as much as possible. Maybe they're just stacking it here because they understand the system is not going to be a thin system. So, hey, we'll stack a couple of those cells on top of each other and it'll just be almost like a brick. So that's the battery capacity is going to be very important to see what they're able to get out of this system. I do expect them to downclock this processor quite a bit in handheld mode. When you have it docked, it really doesn't matter. You've eliminated the need to maybe accommodate a battery then. You just have thermals you're dealing with. But in that case, they're probably, I assume, going for 2.5 to 3 hours in handheld mode. So yeah, that processor is it's not going to be running at full speed is what we'll say. And again, that's also going to come down to the screen itself and what resolution they're dealing with. If it's like 720p, then it's going to be something I'm sure they can downclock quite a bit to accommodate that. If it's 1080p, that'll be a bit more interesting. And then we get into the idea of DLSS, their upscaling techniques and stuff. So this is exciting. Things are moving along here, it appears. Honestly, looking at this in our history with factory leaks, I am inclined to believe that this is all correct, or somebody did a very, very good job faking all of this and trolling the internet. I'm going to keep up to date on this as we go throughout the day, and we'll present more of this tomorrow to see what findings we have, just in a more summarized fashion. And who knows, maybe we are getting close to Nintendo finally saying something about this presentation. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.